Yes, 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 we're back, we're back, we're back. You are listening to Soul Perspectives here on CKUT 90.3 FM. My name is Kym Dominique-Ferguson. I'm in the air with...
Renee Jordan. We're in the air.
We're in the air. We're in the airwaves.
I'm flying.
And on the line, we have Danielle Boursiquot, a writer from Brooklyn who loves riding her bike. But when she's not doing that and trying to resurrect her jab, cross, hook, uppercut, or overthink everything, she writes about family, food, and magic. Before the break in the first segment, you had mentioned that you had gone through a health crisis while, like, at the same time that you were getting your black belt in, is it karate, taekwondo?
Mixed martial arts. It's kickboxing and submission grappling. Yeah.
Right. But you mentioned that you were going through a health crisis. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what happened and what were you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Shortly while I was training, actually, I started training at a local mixed martial arts school in Queens, where I was living at the time. And I started to notice some symptoms and that were a little bit confusing to me. So I had very, very strong headaches, and I was not one who was prone to headaches. So these went beyond migraine. I was feeling some heat sensitivity on my right side of my skin. Like my leg would touch something and I would feel like it was burning. I had lower back pain. I had vertigo, dizziness, random pains. And I was like, wow, what's going on with me? Long story short, I went to the doctor. I called my dad, and he said, he spoke to one of his doctor friends and said, tell her to go to the hospital right now. Call an ambulance. I'm like, ambulance? I'm okay. But he says, do what I tell you to do. So I called the ambulance, and I felt weird because I'm walking and they're like, no, we need to strap you into this chair. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So we get to the hospital. I describe my symptoms. We go through a battery of tests. I get admitted, and I'm really confused. I'm like, hold on, what is wrong with me? So after blood tests and CAT scans and MRIs and all these things, while I was there in the night, I get woken up, and the nurse tells me, okay, we need to administer to you this anti-inflammatory drip because your preliminary results reveal that you have multiple sclerosis. Okay. I was like, what? I mean, I had heard of it, but I really didn't know much about the illness. So of course I panic, and, time passes. They submit me to all other kinds of tests to just kind of rule other things out. But it turns out that's what it was. I spent a week in the hospital. I didn't think that I would leave that hospital because from the moment I checked in to the moment I checked out, my body went through all sorts of changes. I could no longer walk. I was in extreme pain. And I said, wow, this is how it ends. This is how it ends. Wow. But, time passes. I met with a specialist. I got on treatment, blah, blah, blah. I was on disability from work for a while because I couldn't walk. The pain was extreme, and, different symptoms started to flare more and more. Right. But once I was able to walk again a little bit better and kind of regain my breath and my stamina as far as walking from my building to like 2 blocks away, that was stamina building for me. Right. When I finally was able to go back to train, my sensei, one of my senseis was like, okay, so we're going to schedule you for the black belt test. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I can barely walk. Do you see what's happening? Do you not know the situation? Right. He's like, yeah, I know. I see it. And you're going to go to the black belt test. Okay. So we train, and it's like this whole Rocky montage, of training privately because I couldn't control my left arm anymore. It was just wiggling and wobbling. I couldn't, control where my arm went. Right. And there was the weakness, and there was the dizziness and the pain. Long story short, I made it to the black belt test. I went through the test, but I didn't pass the first time because by the end of the test, I was just so weak and like drained. I didn't pass. He says, okay, you'll just go to the next one. So 3 months later, I went back for the next test, and I made it. It was the hardest thing I had to do physically in my life because I didn't want people to know that I was ill, that I was struggling with something. I didn't want them to give me a pass and go easy on me. But I realized, okay, well, I don't want to hurt myself either. So I let them know what was going on, which I had to. But I mean, I pushed for that thing. I climbed that mountain. And it was one of the most rewarding things I ever had to do physically. Because then it affected all other aspects of my life. I mean, if you can do this and push yourself through this, then you can push yourself through work or a relationship or, a problem or a
Writing
discussion or writing a book. There you go. Nice segue. Nice. I like how you did that there. It was just one of the most valuable experiences of my life. And it taught me self-defense. It taught me discipline. It taught me focus that transcended the physical. So that health crisis really was an eye-opener for me. It's something that I still live with. Multiple sclerosis does not have a cure. There are treatments. In the beginning, all the treatments that were available were injection only.
Right.
So I went to 3 different treatments that were injection. I went from sticking myself every day to sticking myself 3 times a week to sticking myself once a month. It all became a lot. And at one point, I decided that I was not going to undergo treatment any further. I was going to focus on treating myself as holistically as possible, right. While still paying attention to my doctors and still, going through my MRIs and all that. But I really wasn't interested in injecting myself with medicine all the time anymore. So I changed my diet. I like to call myself vegan adjacent. I have been vegan adjacent for years now.
What's vegan adjacent?
Well, it's like vegan is sitting right here. And I'm sitting next to a vegan. We're sitting next to each other, but we're not. And I'm not in vegan's lap yet. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm sitting
Monday
right
to
next
Thursday. Monday to Thursday, we're eating veggies, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Kind of, sort of. Me and vegan live next door to each other. We see each other every day. We wave. We're like, "Yo, what's up, vegan? How you doing?" Yeah, okay. But sometimes I dip back into the carnivorous lifestyle that I was raised with.
Okay.
But I really try to focus on eating vegan without animal products most of the time. But sometimes
and what did that change bring about health-wise? Like, what do you think?
From the research that I've been able to do for myself and speaking to my doctors and speaking to other doctors, the reduction in animal products influences the recurrence of episodes for people who suffer from MS. And there are different levels of MS. I'm very fortunate in that I have relapsing remitting. So I'll have a relapse and I'll feel all messed up and bad and whatever, but then I'll come back.
You're good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Other people are not so fortunate. They'll have their episode, but they kind of stay where they are. And they'll have, the physical symptoms that don't go away. So they end up walking with crutches or on the wheelchair, or they're trembling all the time. And I thank my lucky stars. I thank the universe. I thank all the energy that's out there that I am not there and I haven't been there. And I was diagnosed in 2005. So we're just going to keep that going.
Yeah. And just in case people don't know, what is multiple sclerosis?
Multiple sclerosis, in layman's terms, is, as layman as I can possibly put it, is a neurological disease that affects the communication between the brain and the body. So the simplest example that I can visually share is that you have like a Walkman that has the source of the music, and then you have your earphone cord, and then the actual earphones. So what happens in MS is that cord that goes from the actual Walkman to the headphones is damaged. So it gets nicked. And so those wires are exposed, and the air and the water and whatever touches them, and that interferes with the transmission of the music from the machine to your ears. So you get the sound all messed up and weird. So the brain is sending messages to my body. My body's not getting them correctly. So sometimes I get dizzy and I have vertigo, or I have pain that doesn't go away, or the symptoms are so varied and not everyone has the same symptoms. But that's like the very basic, super simple, explanation and illustration of what goes on. So I have these nicks and these lesions, as they call them, on my brain and on my spinal cord. Some people have a whole lot of them on their brain, a whole lot. I have a few, which is why I'm just relapsing remitting, thank God.
Okay.
That's that.
Okay.
Your description of that was such a writer's description. Like, it was the perfect way to break that down for everyone to understand.
Yeah, agreed.
So I can see how you were propelled into becoming a writer.
It was destiny. This MS and the writing, it was destiny. We were destined to be partners.
Because I've been following you for a while now. I think about 5 years now. We've been connected, and the first stuff that I read from you was your blog, and you talk a lot about your life and things that happen in your blog. How did you translate that from going from writing a blog to now writing your first book, which is called Salt?
Well, the blog for me was a way, I need to resurrect that actually. Thanks for that. But the blog was a way for me to kind of express what I was going through in an artistic way without feeling sorry for myself. I didn't want to be, one of those people who writes a blog and is detailing every single detail of all the pain and all the terrible and all the ugly about what's going on. And I'm crying all the time and I'm so sad, which happened and continues to happen periodically. But I was so focused on not feeling sorry for myself and not wanting anybody else to feel sorry for me, but I wanted to share and I wanted to express it. I said, okay, how can I talk about this in a way that's semi-cute, semi-creative, semi-educational to other people, but without sounding like I'm some sort of an expert or a medical expert, because I'm not. I'm just a person who's dealing with it, but I want to share a little bit.
Yeah.
But writing the book, I feel like that was always going to happen. I just had to bite up the courage to go ahead and do it and say, you know what, you talk about this all the time. You keep saying this, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book. But girl, you haven't done it. Don't be one of those writers who talks about the book they're writing, but then the book never actually materializes ever.
Yeah.
No, put it together. Do it.
Yeah.
And so I pushed through, and it wasn't an easy process, but I came up with it and birthed me a book.
Mm. So this was your first book, the first one that you've written. What is it about? Give us a summary.
So, let's see here, because I'm super lazy. But Salt is basically a confession from a woman to her unborn child before time runs out for the both of them. Now, as she communicates her truths to this child who is not yet in the world, she shares, lessons and anecdotes about the 5 women in her life that have guided her path to where she is on that day. Her story is, as the clock ticks, the main character, she goes through decades of stress and stories and discovers that the greatest gift that she can give her baby is the truth. And that truth is not to be forgiven or explained. It only asks to be revealed. And one of the focuses that I wanted for this book was the idea of generational communication. I think in a lot of cultures, and I speak primarily from my culture, was Caribbean culture, which is more specifically Haitian culture, there tends to be very little clear communication between parents and children. A lot of family stories and family things are brushed under and not shared with the children because they're too young to understand. Even as they grow up and they mature and they become adults, certain things are just never really brought up again, never explained. And generational hurts and traumas kind of follow each other in cycles. And I felt like this is an opportunity for me to put into fiction a way that these cycles can be broken somewhat, or even just kind of like knocked down a little bit, so that the next generation doesn't have to carry those same burdens and make the same mistakes.
Wow.
That's very deep. That is so deep, because I think as a person with 2 Caribbean parents, and just even how you were mentioning before with your parents when you went to gatherings and being the youngest person there, they discussed things and they didn't really want you to hear what they were saying or repeat what they're saying or speak the way that they were speaking. But there were some things that needed to be communicated to you, some things that would be lost if you weren't able to speak Creole, and some things that had been lost to some people just because their parents chose not to share that with them. Mm-hmm. Like, this is deep. and Salt. Why Salt, though?
I wanted the title to be symbolic of what was being shared in every story of the book. So the book has a number of chapters, and I feel like I wanted each chapter to in its own way symbolize each woman, because it is a very female-driven narrative, and all the main characters are women. I wanted the title to reflect that these women are sharing and are showing their salt, meaning their worth, their measure, their value, and how that measure and that value is highlighted, and sometimes when it's compromised.
Yeah. It is now
time for a break.
I'm gonna cut out that part. We are gonna yes. Just in case you're tuning in for the first time, we're speaking to Danielle Boursiquot, who is a writer based in Brooklyn. We're gonna take a quick break, but keep it locked. You are listening to Soul Perspectives here on CKUT 90.3 FM.